Yo, what is up guys, it's Pedro here, and in today's video we'll be talking about a edge rusher that the Washington Commanders have been linked to by a bunch of different analysts that I think would be a great pick at 29 or maybe even earlier for the Washington Commanders. So we'll talk about it in today's video. If you guys are new, make sure to subscribe, hit that like button and that notification bell as well. All those things help out a ton. It's free, takes 1 second, trying to hit this 16,000 subscribers by draft time, and we're a month away, I believe, officially from the 2025 NFL draft, which is crazy, but it's draft season. Free agency has, at least most of it has come and gone. You know, there's still stuff going on, but for the most part, we're done with free agency. There'll be some, different ways. But let's talk about this edge rusher that the Commanders have been linked to a little bit that I think would be a great player for them to draft. I don't think he falls to 29, but if he does, the Commanders have to jump on that. And even if he starts falling a little bit, I wouldn't mind them trading up a little bit in the first round, and then in the second round they trade back and recoup those assets that they use to get that first round pick. But let's talk about it. So it's not Abdul Carter, which is one of the guys on the screen, but James Pearce, edge rusher out of Tennessee, is the guy that I want to talk about. He is an absolute stud, and he has been linked to the Washington Commanders a couple of times. So shout out to my guy Mason here. Kind of put out a bunch of different analysts / sites and their different players that they had the Washington Commanders getting. So Daniel Jeremiah had Azare Thomas, cornerback out of FSU. Then Mel Kiper had cornerback out of Kentucky. CBS had Matthew Golden. 33rd team had Malachi Starks. TDN, which is a draft network, they have draft analysts there. A bunch of them had James Pearce. PFF Walter Nolan, and Tankathon James Pearce. So James Pearce linked to them by a couple different networks. I mean, Tankathon, they're more in terms of just tracking draft stuff, but they do have analysts there that do scout and everything and do have connects in the league. But, TDN is a bigger connect. Jordan Reed, who, not the Redskins player, but the analyst for ESPN, is one of the top guys. He used to work there. So, these guys do have sources. They do hear stuff around the league. And really, this is just, he is being linked to them, but this is just a discussion point. Talk about James Pearce, maybe some other edge rushers the Washington Commanders could get. But this guy, James Pearce, is a stud. You look at this third highest, this is PFF pass rush win rate of any first round edge rusher since 2017. And, James Pearce and Abdul Carter would have number 2 and number 3 just behind Nick Bosa. So that is, some very high, good company there. Number 2, James Pearce, is actually above Abdul Carter, who's going to be a top 3 pick, I believe. And if he goes any further than that, that's crazy. But you can see some of the other names on the list: Micah Parsons, Myles Garrett, Chase Young, Mike Green, who's in this class. He's another edge rusher that is going to be in that range for the Commanders. You see some other names as well. But let's go over James Pearce a little bit. We'll talk about some other guys as well. So 6'5", 245 pounds. And, at the combine, had a very good, score, I would say, athleticism score in terms of his 40-yard dash. 4.47 40-yard dash time is very good for an edge rusher. Not a Montez Sweat speed necessarily, but very good nonetheless. Vertical jump's not that great. Broad jump, not sure, and the 40 or 10-yard split, I'm assuming that's pretty good. His athleticism rank for the edge rushers was number 4, so pretty good there. And some information about him, and let's X out of this. Pearce is a tight hip linear pass rusher with explosive takeoffs and good speed to power, but a lack of bend to flatten at the top. His high pressure rate is partially driven from an instinctive feel for positioning, allowing him to work around protection. You guys can see some of that stuff. He needs to improve his strength and his technique as an NFL run defender, which, hey, the Commanders, that's something they're looking for, is a good run defender. So maybe that's something that could draw them away from James Pearce. But he's got really good traits, and he's going to have a higher ceiling than a lot of these guys. Strengths, good first, second, and third steps, And again, you guys can read some of that. Maybe weaknesses is something better to look at. Needs more mass and play strength for transition into pros. That's something that a lot of the edge rushers need to do, and he'll be able to do that. Just put on a little bit of weight and strength. And that's really it. The run game stuff was, the biggest takeaway, I would say, from the weaknesses. Let's go to his stats. We'll go to ESPN for that, just to see some of his numbers. So this past year had 7.5 sacks for the Tennessee Volunteers, and then the year before had 9.5 sacks. Sorry, just trying to X out of this ad, but yeah, 9.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles in 2023. Had an interception, touchdown. And then this past year, like I said, 7.5 sacks, a forced fumble recovery. So good stats overall. There were some reports about character concerns, there's some rumors, but I don't really know about that. I feel like it's a lot of just smoke screens, people trying to get players to fall, which is not good. So I'm not going to really take that into account until maybe if he actually starts to fall heavy. Oh, he's falling all the way to the end of the first round, or past the first round into the second round, because his range is kind of it's all over the place. I see some mocks of him going as late as where we're picking, and some going earlier, in before even 20. So he does have a big range, and with this class there is going to be a lot of different opinions, because there aren't really that many elite guys. So just keep that in mind. But let's talk. So we talked about James Pearce. I think it would be a good player for the Commanders to potentially get a edge rusher that has a lot of potential. If you're going to draft the end of the first round, you have to see some star potential. And some of these guys, I don't know if I see a lot of star potential, but with James Pearce, I do. I'm not going to lie that I've watched his film or anything, but just from things I've heard, seen, highlights, people talking, draft analysts talking, and the traits that he has, I think James Pearce would be a good pick for the Commanders. Even would be willing to trade up a little bit for him. And some other guys, like I said, Mike Green is an option. Abdul Carter is not an option at all for the Washington Commanders. He will not be there where the Commanders are going. Let's just look at top edge rushers 2025 NFL draft. We'll just go to we'll go to PFF, but like you always have to do, take PFF with a grain of salt. But all these websites, so they got Mike Green as number 2. They got James Pearce as number 3 edge rusher. So both of those guys would be options. You got the Boston College guy, Mikael Williams, Georgia. Shamar Stewart's a guy I've heard a lot about. Same thing with Nick Scorton. Those guys are going to be in the Commanders' range. Landon Jackson, same thing. I'm trying to see any other names that I've been hearing. Jack Sawyer, I've seen a little bit, but obviously end of the first round is very, very rich for Jack Sawyer. And then I'm trying to see Josiah Stewart. They have him pretty low compared to consensus there. That's why it's good to look at other lists as well, just to compare. But this site has Abdul Carter, then James Pearce, and then Shamar Stewart. So you see they had Shamar Stewart so low, and then here they have him a little bit higher. Look at some of the other stuff. Mikael Williams, Mike Green's a little bit lower on this list. James Pearce is higher. So James Pearce would be a good pick for in my opinion, for the Commanders. So the average rank for James Pearce for the player is 19, I guess. That's where he's being taken, I guess, in these mock drafts, is what I'm reading from that, or where they have him at. Shamar Stewart, 21. Mikael Williams, 19.5. I guess is where he's being taken in these mock drafts. Mike Green. So a lot of these guys are in the range of where the Commanders are, taking players. So, Mike Green, Mikael Williams, Shamar Stewart, James Pearce, they're all going to be in that range. Nick Scorton, where the Commanders are drafting. So just, again, something to, keep in mind. Something to keep in mind. Edge rusher is obviously a position of need. I think it's the biggest position of need for the Washington Commanders heading into the draft. I think running back's another one. I think you could add another receiver, safety, maybe cornerback are lower tier needs, but they're still needs. I think immediately I would say safety is more of a need than corner, just because you did sign Jonathan Jones, you got Lattimore, you got Mike Sanders still. So I would say that's a little bit bigger of a need, but that's just me, just because I think safety, you have Quan Martin, you have Will Harris, but you can't be fully set on Will Harris. You can't be fully set on him. That's just my opinion on the situation. So edge rusher the first round. If you don't, maybe you trade back a little bit, take a running back or another position in the second round, and accumulate draft picks. But James Pearce, if he fell to 29, I'm punching that card in, running to the podium, and Roger Goodell is going to announce that pick right away, because James Pearce would be a great pick for the Commanders, in my opinion. Maybe some people disagree because of the rumors about character concerns, or maybe about his run fits, but for me, it's a guy that the Commanders should be taking a chance on with their position of need at edge rusher, and a guy that maybe doesn't have a super high floor, but definitely has a very high ceiling. So thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed, and peace.